down our neck telling us what to do. And so I'm wondering from the group, what have you guys done to try to solve this problem? First of all, I see lots of heads nodding. My first question is going to be, is this a problem for you guys? But I think it is, based on the head nodding. So my second question is, how have you tried to solve this problem? What have you guys done to try to build a more functional relationship, a harmonious relationship with your sales team to be sure that customers are satisfied, you guys don't want to quit?
Yeah, so what we've done is we were finding that issue as well, like, I don't know, there was just no communication or like link between sales and support. So we created a role, which is my role now. So I do primarily customer support, but I'm also like a sales specialist, I guess.
Okay.
So I take incoming sales calls, which the salespeople wouldn't really take. Our salespeople do more like demos for bigger accounts and things like that, and they'll follow up on big leads. And I'll work on like smaller leads, qualify bigger leads for the salespeople, and write notes and things like that, like detailed notes for them. So at least there's, you know, some communication between the two teams, and then they can follow up with me if like there's anything they need to ask and things like that. So I act kind of as a liaison, and it's working. Like our VP of growth, who heads the sales team, is like seeing the notes and, you know, seeing how I'm communicating with the sales team. So that's just kind of the way we've just created a role, basically.
So it sounds like your customer is actually the sales team, right? Like they're the ones calling you up and saying, how do I get through this? Or I need you to talk to my customer, right? But your function is a bit altruistic in that you want the information so that when the contract is closed.
Yeah.
But in your day-to-day work, you're supporting the sales team to help make sure this deal is closed, and then you can provide your team, the support team,
exactly,
with the history and the knowledge of why the customer purchased and what they're expecting.
And it started with like basically the support team getting all these inbound sales calls, and we haven't had sales training, so, you know, we don't know what to say to them when they're like, oh, like, what's the difference between Workable and like Bullhorn, which is a competitor? So, you know, we didn't know that, and we weren't sure how much ownership we were meant to take for those calls.
Right.
So that's why we created the role, just so that it was a little bit more structured, so people knew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are your sales, those who are in sales, do they have goals tied to renewals? So sort of tying back that if a customer churns, it goes back and affects their sales commission.
Yeah, I've actually, in 2 recent organizations where I've worked, I've seen it in 2 different ways. So I worked for a company called Gomez a few years ago, and they had a clear hunter-farmer model, right? So the hunters were all focused on net new business. They never, I'm using the word maybe too strongly, but they almost never communicated with the members of support, services, product management, you name it, and they didn't care. Their job was to close the first deal, and someone else would pick up the mess. And then there was the account managers, the farmers, who were picking up the mess, and the services teams had really strong relationships with them. A lot of the services business was actually not to net new customers, because the hunters saw us as a way to slow down the sales process, whereas the farmers saw us as a way to get things back on track and help to drive expansion and renewals within the account. More recently, when I was at Veracode, most of the sales reps they owned an account, and so they were responsible for the new business and the growth. What actually happened there was, because of that, this is my customer. You can't make any decisions around this customer, and I am staying right over your shoulder every step of the way through your project. And so they were probably spending as much time managing the services team as they were selling, which is a problem. You want them selling. You want them really nurturing those accounts and trusting us to do what we do best, which is consult or deliver support services. And, you know, whether you're a true consultant from a billable revenue perspective, or whether you're, you know, a customer success manager where you're not billable but you're providing consultative services, still need to have the flexibility to do your job.
Is the setup of the service, is it enough to warrant an onboarding specialist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it depends on the service itself. But in a lot of places, you know, I think with SaaS, most of the organizations represented here are SaaS-based organizations. What happened now? I think what's happening a lot with SaaS is that the traditional consultant who comes in and stands up the technology does an implementation. It's not really what consultants and customer success managers do today. It's more around adding value around the product, maybe helping with some configuration, helping the customer decide what's the right way to really get value out of the product. Whereas, you know, if you turn back time 15 years when everybody was doing on-premise, really the function of consulting was, you know, you sell $1 million worth of product and you're going to sell $300,000 of consulting because we're going to stand up the technology. So with this shift, there's a lot more need to have organizations provide that kind of onboarding because it's self-service, you know, and I think of it as being self-service like the gym is self-service. Any one of us can go to the gym and use any of the equipment as long as we have a membership. But how many of us go to the gym and actually at the end of the year feel like we've actually achieved the result we're looking for? Our blood pressure lower, our weight is lower, we're physically stronger. That's where the customer success team comes in. We're the personal trainer that helps that customer apply the best practices so that they get value out of the product. And part of that is proper onboarding. Yes, Chris?
So I'm talking sales.
I happen to know.
So as a person
Picking on sales, I'm sorry.
As a person who's been in sales for 20 years, I guess there's 2 points to bring up. So as someone who has worked with customers and tried to close a deal with the assumption that the work that you've done gets passed off to someone else who will then explain that to a customer support or some type of support role. And invariably, that never happens.
True.
But I've seen in a lot of organizations that you go out, you sell them the dream of what it is that they want. You expect that that's going to be transferred over to someone else, and then there's a, you know, it doesn't quite transfer over. So the communication piece, I think, is really, really critical when it comes time to handing over an account. But on the other side of it is that if a customer support person is working with an account and things aren't going well, invariably the first person they call is that salesperson. And I think what happens is that when things don't go well, since they call sales, there are salespeople who feel as though they have to manage the account from that point on. And it's a double-edged sword. If you're not going out trying to build a pipeline and trying to get that new customer, you're hurting your numbers, but if that customer doesn't follow through and buy the deal, all that work that you put in is all for naught.
I agree 100%, and so I think what you touched on is that there's a communication problem that can turn into a trust problem.
Yes.
Right? And so, as a customer success team, if we're working in partnership with our sales counterparts, and it is a partnership, we understand and respect what you do, you understand and respect what we do, we can overcome a lot of those issues. And that's when you start to get harmony between the two teams, because the more you know about what we're capable of doing and what we're not capable of doing, and the more we know about your sales process and your mission and your objectives, the more we can find happy medium. One of my favorite people in the world was a guy named Mark Rudolph, who was head of sales at Gomez when I was there. And he and I would get in, he's enormous. He's like 6'3" and 280 pounds. He's enormous. And he and I would get into these screaming matches with each other in the middle of the office because we were coming at a problem from different angles. But every single time it ended in a hug, because at the end of the day, we were able to keep the need of the customer and the need of our company as the most important thing, not our positions as services versus sales. So you do get out and you have these arguments, but it's more a brother-sister relationship, and at the end, you love each other.
So I'd love to talk about this kind of from 2 different positions and different perspectives at different companies. I was a sales engineer at my previous company, and I came from the support team. And I can tell you that experience to me was something that was really eye-opening, because as someone who's in support, I got to go up to sales and hold them accountable for what they were selling. No, you cannot sell that. Know that it's absolutely not going to work, and it's just going to be a headache for someone later on. And so I think making sure that there are people in that role that can speak to that, right? Sales engineers at my previous company was one of the best ways to do it, and they were people that were more open to talking to sales. I think that training the salespeople is also something that was really important, and not just on like sales, right, but on the product. I was appalled at the lack of knowledge that the business development representatives, that the account managers had. And so we started doing things like tech talks, where we just have people come in and it's, bring your lunch, we're going to whiteboard. Let's talk about this. Here's how you sell this feature, and make sure that you're selling them the right fit, and that you're not going to either undersell them and sell them something that they're going to be like, hey, my video is, I only get one quality on it, and it's terrible. Yeah, I could have told you that from earlier. And so actually going through this training and making sure that the people had the understanding of the platform or of the technology in order to have better conversations. And they're motivated because they want to make better sales. Right. Is that they want to make sure the sale is going to stick. And if they're the BDRs, then they're just hungry to continue growing their careers. They want to be able to make better calls, flip more accounts. For my current company, and I'm not sure how this has necessarily worked right now, and I think we're getting into the scaling problem where we have alignment calls. Whereas something which is a certain point in the sales process, someone from the customer success team comes onto a call, sits down for 30 minutes, vets the customer, talks about what is your need, what are your goals, what are your timelines, what do you want to do with your data, right? What are all these kind of big questions we ask? And then again, we kind of say, yeah, they'll be fine customers, okay, they've got someone, it's cool. Or at the end we go, this is a nightmare, what are you doing, right? And that's pretty rare, but you know, it has happened.
It happens, right.
And we started trying to get away from those calls because again, they don't scale. And so what we've done is we've instituted kind of a form that the salespeople fill out.
Do they fill it out?
Sometimes, I mean, we've kind of mandated.
Loaded question.
We
You
mandated.
gotta require it, you gotta build it in so they can't close the deal without filling out the key
Yeah,
requirements.
no, you're right.
And that's pretty much it, is we've said you don't get access to someone from the customer success team unless you fill out this form. You don't get anyone to join you for another call until you fill out this form and we can read through it and say, yes, they'll be an okay customer.
Yeah.
And figuring out what goes in that form is really hard.
And I think you had a quick comment, and then we'll
Yeah,
wrap up.
sure.
So the best way I was gonna work is has to do with like compensation plan. So our sales engineers were compensated not only on an influence revenue target, but also on a delivery efficiency target. So you know how well we could deliver on what they actually sold. And then we implemented accelerators for the sales team, gave them year 2 value. So if the customer was like decreasing costs, then they didn't qualify for that bonus. But if they were
Sure.
increasing or renewing, then they did
Right, and
qualify.
chances are, if they sell a bad deal in year 1,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily gonna be good for them in year 2.
Yep, and we had project managers that were responsible for actually seeing the project through to completion, and that kind of helped keep the salespeople at bay because the project manager was really like the quarterback, the gatekeeper, managing the client relationship, managing the technical resources to make sure they were on time, but then also definitely sending it off to salespeople.
Yep.
But I think that sales engineer, having them do held accountable for both sides was
Yep.
really helpful.
When I was at Gomez, my work husband was the head of sales engineering because they were my defense. They were the ones I really invested a lot of time and energy in that team because they're more, generally speaking, more technical than your average salesperson. They can kind of get a sense of are we going down a path that the organization can support, whether it's the product team, the support team, the services team, what have you. So we just invested a ton of energy in making them our best friend.